go to school, get a job, pay taxes, save money, buy a house because it's an asset, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. That creates poor people. It's a hypnosis train going through your brain. So with that, this was his lesson number 1, and the rich don't work for money. So that's why my goal when I was about your age, a little older, around 25, I said, my goal is to never need a paycheck again from anybody, even the government. I don't want any Medicare, Social Security, or whatever. When I was a military pilot, so, oh, you got to get the military pilot pension. I said, you do, but I'm not going to. And just because of this here, that was the difference. Because I never wanted to work for money to need a paycheck. But this is what I work for. So what I work for, number 1 is I'm an entrepreneur. I want businesses. I have multiple businesses. And I don't work in them, as you know, because you work here. You never see me, do you?
No.
Because I don't work for a paycheck.
Exactly.
Next is real estate. And real estate is good for many things which we'll go into, but number 1 is debt. I use a lot of debt to buy real estate, and I pay no taxes. That's the relationship there. The next is paper. And that's savings, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and that stuff. I don't have any of that stuff. I don't save money. I don't have any of that. But this is what most people have: go to school, get a job, get a 401k, and save money. Loser. Okay. I'm doing that just to upset you guys, because maybe you'll start to think. Because I didn't make the rules. I'm just telling you these are the rules. These people pay the highest taxes, and they work the hardest. And the last are commodities. 4 different asset classes. So commodities are, number 1 is gold, silver, oil, land, water, food. So this is what I work for. When I left school, rather than working for a paycheck and working for money, my education had to go beyond getting a job, which I had a good job. But I now had to start, when I left school, about your age, the thing I focused on first actually was commodities. So back in 1972, I started buying gold. And it was illegal for Americans to own gold. Can you imagine that? Wow. Back in 72. Today you have Bitcoin. It's different. Okay. Everything is changing so rapidly today. So I started with gold, but actually the next thing was actually oil, because I went to school to be a tanker officer driving ships for Standard Oil. So I understand oil. So my wife and I don't own Standard Oil or Chevron or Exxon. We own oil wells. Again, taxes. You get no tax breaks for owning paper oil, huge tax breaks for owning real oil. Yeah. And then I went into real estate. Why? Because I can use debt to buy real estate. And because I use debt, I pay no taxes. And then third, I started my business, my first real business. I had many businesses as a kid, but my first real business was a nylon and Velcro surfer wallet business. And I went worldwide right away. The trouble is I was an idiot, and the business went up, and the business came down. What kept me alive was this and this. Okay. So you may say, well, aren't you working for money? But we'll go into that next. I don't want what's called a paycheck. I want cash flow from here. So that's what I mean by the rich don't work for money. You want cash flow that pays very little taxes, and I can use lots of debt over here. The average person who went to school, their biggest liability they have is student loans, of course. I mean, it's horrible what they do to you guys today. You have student loan, which is the worst type of debt of all, because you cannot declare bankruptcy on it. And then you get out and you try and buy a house, and you call it an asset when it's really a liability. Why? Because the cash is flowing that way. Your house costs you money. You rent a house, it still costs you money. Okay? Then you have to have a nice car. I had one of those. This. So the problem with most young people is they go to school to get that job, then a lot of them have student loan debt, then they try and get married and buy a house, have a car, and then they have credit card debt, but they never have the chance to come over here. If they do any investing in America, it's a 401k, which I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Now, you should, but I don't, because I don't have to. Because I went to school for here, and people who don't go to school should be here. This is a 401k, IRA, ETFs, and that stuff, paper, savings. I don't touch that stuff. So when people say, how do I change my life? Well, you change those words. I wouldn't go to school because you learn nothing about money in school. I wouldn't get a job because if I have a job, I'm an employee. And then I'd pay taxes. And I don't pay taxes. And I don't save money. And I use debt to get rich. And I don't invest in the stock market. That's why I'm rich. And so the young people who are listening right now are saying, but that's what my mom and dad said. But that's what mom and dad say all over the world. So to the young people, I just say challenge or question what you've been taught. Because from the Bible, I'm not religious, the word becomes flesh. So if you say, go to school, they say, but I learned nothing about money. Get a job, you become an employee.
Yeah.
If you're an employee, you work for money, I pay taxes. Then they tell you to save money. Why would you save money when the government's printing money? You know, and get out of debt. Well, debt is money. I use debt to get rich. Most people use debt to get poor and invest in the stock market. I don't invest in the stock market. So when you wonder why so many people struggle financially, is they haven't challenged the hypnosis, the words, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, pay taxes. Until you question those hypnotic trances, you don't change. So when I was a little boy, I had poor dad and rich dad, saying,
in your head.
He's saying, go to school. My rich dad goes, what a waste of time that is,
Right.
And the way my rich dad taught me, just playing Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. I learned about money. I learned to be a capitalist, not an employee. I don't pay taxes. I use debt for money. And I don't invest in the stock market. And when I say that to adults, they get angry at me. So, well, that's what I've done. I said, well, that's why you're poor. But when I said to young people, you have a chance yet. You have a chance. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying question the hypnotic trance put in your head, because that's what keeps people poor. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a story about my 2 fathers. My poor dad was a school teacher, very smart man. And my rich dad never went to school. And so the information, so starting at the age of 9, growing up in Hawaii, the information was different. The advice was different. So I think most of your viewers out there sitting inside their head are the words from their mother and father. Go to school, get a job, pay taxes, save money, buy a house because it's an asset, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. That creates poor people. It's a hypnosis train going through your brain.